Well, hey, everybody, it's just Steve here again, and I have found yet another interesting person to hang out with. His name is Giampiero Scattolon, and we were super excited to have him on the show. So, Giampiero, welcome to the show.
Hello, good morning.
All right, now, I believe you're calling in from New Hampshire, is that correct?
That is correct. I've been living in New Hampshire for the last 7 months.
Okay, and so, but you've got you've been kind of everywhere, right? Like if I look at your stuff, you were born in Peru, raised in LA, lived in Germany, now you're in New Hampshire. Is that kind of the path you've been on geographically?
Pretty much. I lived in LA. Then when I was a young boy, not a young man, I was 19 to 21. I lived in Texas for 2 years. At the time, I was very involved with the church where I grew up. So I did a 2-year mission. And I lived in the southern part of Texas. Then after that, I lived in LA for a little while. Then I moved to Germany. I've been to Afghanistan, and then back in Germany. And I've traveled quite a bit throughout Europe. So yeah, I've been everywhere. I've been traveling since I was 14.
Yeah. So what's the most interesting place that you've ever lived or traveled to? And define interesting however you want.
Interesting. Well, I guess Europe, living in Europe was very interesting because I wanted to learn German so bad. And it's a very difficult language. And some people get it and some people don't. I'm in the latter group.
I'm in the don't category.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is that a lot of people there do speak multiple languages, and as soon as they hear that you speak English, they want to practice their English. So I never had the need to really learn it.
So what is it about that's attractive to you? What do you think that is about this desire to learn another language or to have the diversity of languages?
The diversity of stories when you meet different people from different backgrounds. I love airports and train stations and even bus stations, because by chance you may end up talking to someone that you've never met, and there is never or hardly ever there is that what do you do for a living? You just go straight to the conversation and start sharing stories, and sometimes it gets intimate, and there was none of this I need to prove myself that I've been there, I've done that, and I love conversations.
I love that. I love that too. Yeah, I generally sort of like, I don't necessarily approach those conversations, but they happen sometimes. And when they do, I'm just like, why don't I do this more?
Absolutely. I realized in the past few years, a lot of people have bought me coffee or even dinner because the conversations just kept going. And I realized, okay, there's something to all of this, that there may be something I'm contributing to the conversation. So I want to do more of this.
Yeah, and everybody has a story, right? I mean, that's what you discover, that every single person has a story. And a lot of times we think they're boring or they're not worth telling, but it just takes somebody like Giampiero to say, hey, tell me more about your story, for us to open up, because we don't think our stories are interesting, but they are.
They are, and people are fascinating. Like, you look at someone and it's hard to judge people, even though there's a lot of telling things about a person right now. You don't know what they've been or what they've been through. And whenever you give them the outlet and they seem to trust you, all of a sudden you just listen and they start telling you all this stuff, and you're like fascinated.
And you learn to ask the right question to kind of probe the next thing, because I think people are generally, they tell you a little bit of the story, right? And they kind of want to see, is this person actually interested or not? Because if they're kind of, they move to their phone or they don't really ask questions, then people kind of shut down. But if you learn how to kind of ask that next question that they deep inside really want to talk about, but nobody's really ever asked them, then it sort of opens up this fountain of flow, right?
100%. There is one question that I learned in the last few years through just by listening to a lot of different podcasts, and is say more or tell me more. And it works.
It does.
Yeah,
it does, because then you're not directing the conversation. And that's kind of what, as a podcaster, I'm trying to ask the right questions, but oftentimes it is just say more about that, and that's enough, because otherwise, I'm guiding it, or whoever's asking the questions is guiding it where they want it to go. And at the end of the day, I want it to be where does this person want to go?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And it, like you said, organic. It happens organically, and then at the end of the day, you feel like you know each other. Like I believe that once you get past the pleasantries, say, how are you? How's the weather? Did you watch the game last night? You have to put more skin in the game. And that means like you need to open up a little bit and be vulnerable, because they might laugh at you, or they may be like, oh, that's silly. And then the conversation gets interesting. That's where they actually, and I think that's scary when you have to go there and put skin in the game. But that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it's that vulnerability piece, right? It's do I trust you enough to be vulnerable and tell you my actual story and what I actually think about this, not sort of the general answer that most people want to hear.
Yes, 100%. And I think, for example, with family, sometimes it's harder to have these conversations because they know every wound and every failure and all the ups and all the downs. But with a stranger, sometimes it's like, okay, they don't know all my wounds and I may never see them again. So you tend to take more risk once you decide to trust them.
So what do you think happens in those moments beyond, okay, so you run into somebody at the train station and you have this wonderful, wonderful conversation, but the reality is you're never going to see that person again, almost always.
Right.
Is that just joy for the moment, or does something happen that actually is helpful for life as you continue?
I think that people are, what is that quote by Thoreau? People lead lives of quiet desperation.
Quiet desperation, yes.
So I think people are dying to be seen and to be heard. And okay, they don't know me. I may never see them again. And I need a place I need an outlet. And then I don't think you think it that way, but it just so happens that the moment you decide, I can trust them for right now, then you just unload all the stuff that you've been bottling up for a long time.
Yeah. And so what impact does that have, do you think, on that person then going forward? So, they leave there going, man, I ran into this guy and it was just life-giving. He asked me questions. He was interested in my life and it just felt really good. And then do you think like once that sort of subsides, it's over? Do you feel like there's maybe some longer lasting impacts from that conversation?
I think they raise they raise the bar of this is what I want from people.
Yeah.
And then it's almost addicting. Like I want more, whatever that guy gave me or that woman gave me, I want more of that. So yeah, I think we're all like crossing each other's paths all the time. And it's a good opportunity to have those moments where you become aware, whatever that just happened, I want more of that. And I'm going to start asking for that. Sometimes we just don't know how to ask for it.
It's so true. Now you practice something, or you're involved in something called empathetic listening, or tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. I guess we didn't really talk about who is this guy? Why is he on the show? What do you do, Giampiero?
Right now at the moment, after we moved here, I've chosen to do real estate, but that's not my passion. It's just something that I'm doing because ever since I was 21, I've been telling myself that I want to be a public speaker. But for one reason or another, and most of it has to do with self-esteem. I had body issues like, I'm not tall enough and I'm not handsome enough, or I have an accent, therefore I have no credibility. I didn't graduate from college, so why would people want to listen to me? And more over the years, I've started to develop this desire I want to be a speaker. And I've decided that through conversations, you can help other people. You can uplift somebody else or create the space for them to grow. So my aspiration is to become a public speaker. And I think the ways by doing that would be through conversations like this one, to allow the place for people to have that outlet, to say the things that they needed to say. There's a guy that I've been listening to a lot. His name is Jordan Peterson. He wrote the book 12 Rules for Life. and he says that some, I forgot the quote right now, but it has to do with articulated speech. That is one of the highest things that the human being can develop or can do. Articulated speech, because when you speak, then you release all that stuff that is in there. And when you have something to say and you don't, it becomes a lie because you never saw the light of day. And most people leave, again, quiet desperation. It's trapped in there and it dies with you.
That's so good. So when you talk about wanting to be a speaker, it sounds like, is your message to the world about listening to each other? What's kind of, if we say, hey, Giampiero, you did it. All of a sudden, boom, magic happened. You're a public speaker. We've got 40 gigs lined up for you next year. You're going to be paid $300,000 for your time, and it's going to be amazing. And you have 15 seconds to figure out right now what your message is to the world. Like what is your overall arching message that you would love to just share from platforms across the world?
Okay, my message would be that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and the light at the end of the tunnel is you. It's always been you, because we all have this ideal. I wish someday I could be this kind of person. And in order for you to go through all those dark moments in your life, all those tunnels, and that light at the end of the tunnel, it's the better you, that aspirational you. And you have to become that person in order to be able to go through that tunnel. It's like becoming. It's a constant becoming. And it's you who needs to become the hero of your story. And you do it by developing yourself and becoming a little closer to that ideal you.
Oh, that's good. All right. You got me hooked now. Now I'm in. All right. Now I'm in. So what about those of us who are saying, that sounds great. I mean, those are very eloquent, articulate words.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is there a better me? What does that look like? I like the idea of becoming a better me. I like the idea of being inspired to be something more, but I don't know what that is, or is that even right? Shouldn't I be humble and just kind of be satisfied with who I am? Like, what is this? Why should I be driven to be something better? Like, help me a little bit, or help me and help others who are kind of in that place of going, that sounds good, but I don't know.
Okay. Like, in all the different books that I've listened to, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, like Joseph Campbell, The Hero of a Thousand Faces, or The Power of Myth. He talks about how there is a journey, the hero's journey, and we all go through life in a sort of a journey. And there's all these archetypes. There's always the hero of the story. There's the villain. There's the mother. There's the wise old father. And there's a quote that says that the precursor to the hero is the fool. And you have to be the fool. You have to be willing to take that risk and become the fool. People are going to mock you. People are going to say, you cannot do that. No, that's silly. You're stupid. Look at you. You're making a fool out of yourself. But you can only become the hero of the story by going through that process and being the fool first. And then you become the hero. And I believe that can only happen through articulated speech, because once you begin to speak, you begin to create. It doesn't happen any other way. And people will make fun of you, and that's, you either choose to go back and be who you think, I'm stuck, this is who I am, I was born this way, or do you continue to strive at becoming that light at the end of the tunnel, which is you, the better you.
It sounds a bit like Lord of the Rings to me. Obviously, that's a very epic story, but this idea of, we're kind of in this shire, we're in this safe place, but we have this big thing that we have the potential to accomplish, but we have to make that decision to go out, and people will think we're crazy, and we have to be vulnerable, and there's danger to our self-confidence, there's danger to our personality, there's maybe even physical danger to do that, but it is sort of a decision point once you have that vision for what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. I was I was having a conversation with my cousins yesterday, and they were talking about what's happening right now in the world, and a lot of people are afraid. And I mentioned how in a lot of the stories that you watch, there's always an end coming. Like a while ago, there was a TV show called Heroes. I don't know if you remember it.
I do remember it, yeah.
And the theme of the show was save the cheerleader, save the world. So, and the story of the world coming to an end, it's a story that repeats itself in stories. The end of the world is always coming. And by that, I mean, it's like, maybe it's the end of a time period. Maybe it's the end of how things used to be. And every time you grow, every time you move from one chapter of your life to another, it's like a death. The old you has to die. And then you have to reinvent yourself and become a little more, a little better. You're not the same person you were when you were in high school. You're not the same person you were when you were in college. I hope you're not. You know, we all hope that we're not that same person. And we continue to go through all these, the best word that I can think of is epochs, like time periods. And I think that's, we all go through that. And we have to let the old us die and accept the responsibilities that comes with the new us. I want to be a father. I want to be married. Okay, here it comes. Boom, it's yours. What do I do now? Like,
right.
Everybody, I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you've heard it too. Oh, someday I wish I could have more time with my family. Yeah. Okay, now we have Corona. Here you go. Boom, it's yours.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? Figure it out.
That's so good. You know, part of that is just thinking at that higher level too. You know, it's so hard sometimes. You get so caught up in the day to day of everything going on that it's hard to see your life as a high level series of these, you know, eras of time and eras of opportunities and eras of situations. You know, we get so caught up, but it sounds like you're sort of saying, you know, look back, look up a little bit, look at a higher level, kind of view your life as these sort of phases of time.
Right. If I get all over the place, bring me back.
This is what I do, man. I go all over the place. I'll be the one derailing this. You'll be right on point.
There is one thing I've read a lot. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and like I said, you have to be a fool. You have to be the fool in order to become the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And through my mistakes, I've learned a lot of things. I've read a lot about relationships. And one of the complaints when relationships end or they go sour is, you're not the same person I fell in love with. And actually, you hope that that is the case.
Right.
You shouldn't be the same person that you were when you fell in love with your special partner or whatever you call it. You're always evolving, and you're either growing together or growing apart. The growth is going to happen, the development, but to think that I am the same person I was 5 years ago, I hope not.
I love that. The idea, I hope not. I hope I'm not the same person. I hope I'm growing. Obviously, I hope I'm a better person, but either way, I hope I'm growing toward greater and greater levels of maturity or greater and greater depth of who I really am inside, all of those things. You mentioned this idea of becoming the fool to become the hero. And it sounds like that's, you know, one of the messages that you'd love to give to the world is, you be the light at the end of your tunnel. You've got to become the fool to become the hero, all of those things. How does that work then for you in your life? You know, we can talk about the speaking thing. Maybe that's one example. Is that an example of you sort of becoming the fool to become the hero?
I believe so. I believe so because, like, my whole life, like I said, I had all these different issues about self-esteem, and just I convinced myself that there's a lot of things that I cannot do. When I was 14, my family immigrated from Peru to the U.S. And part of my story is that for a long time, I was undocumented. And I had accepted the fact, well, I'm no good. I'm not going to get to go to college. I guess I'll just be a worker for the rest of my life and just live in the shadows. And at some point, I had the opportunity to correct all that and go back to Peru, get my green card, come back, join the army. But I see all these different chapters of my life, different epochs that I've gone through. And in many of those epochs, I convinced myself I'm way behind. I'm not where my friends or my peers are. So I just need to accept the fact that this is who I am. And then opportunities show up, and it's like, are you ready to take this opportunity and become a little more and a little more and a little more? I joined the army when I was 32.
Yeah.
So imagine a 32-year-old man going through basic training with all these 19, 20-year-olds and hoping that you can just make it through basic, you know? I mean, that was my goal. It's like, if I could only make it through basic, you know, that would prove, at least for myself, that I'm strong, that I'm capable. It did a lot for my self-esteem. And then I ended up in Afghanistan. I ended up in combat for 10 months. And I feel that my life has been one reinvention after another, after another. And if there is one character in any of the books that I've listened to, it's Les Miserables. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, the French would be Les Miserables.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. And the main character, Jean
Valjean?
That's a character that I can relate to.
Okay, yeah.
Because of all the many struggles that he went through, but he changed his names many times. He had a prisoner name. He had his original name, and then he has to invent these different personas in order to redeem himself. And I think that that is the message, that you need to save yourself and you need to redeem yourself and go through all these different chapters or epochs of your life and continually allow that old identity that you had died so the new one can come forward. And I think, again, going back to the speech, it could only happen is when you speak it into being. You need to open your mouth and make it happen. It dies internally, so you have to somehow, speak it into being, you know? That's one of the things.
That's so good. I've got, I'm a big fan of Les Miserables. I weep uncontrollably when I see that, and Jean Valjean is a phenomenal example. And for those of you who don't know the story, I mean, yeah, he's in prison and he's just basically referred to as a number. Right? He's just a number. I forget the number, 04629 or something, whatever the number is.
24601.
24601?
Yeah.
No, yeah, okay, that's 24601. I got the song in my head. But I just love that. And so what I'm hearing you say is we need to break free from just being a number to being who we are. And like you said, the situation may demand that we have to reinvent ourselves. He had to do things that he maybe otherwise wouldn't have done if he hadn't been caught stealing the bread. But I do think that I love that, because I think oftentimes we are labeled correctly or incorrectly by a society, by our family, by our community as a number. Like, Giampiero, here's what you are. You are you're a Peruvian immigrant to the U.S. You're undocumented. This is what you do. Here's your number.
Right.
And you're sort of saying, no, I'm going to reinvent myself and break free from that expectation, I guess.
Right. And you have to. And sometimes you give yourself that label and you accept it.
But the thing is, you don't have to, right? Like, here's the thing, like, a lot of people don't. And so, you say you have to. I think I agree that you have to in order to live a fulfilling life. Mm-hmm. But I feel like some people don't break free from that. So I'd love to kind of understand a little bit more. Why do you think it is that some people just accept that, 24601, I'm a number. This is what I do. This is my lot in life. I'm just going to go through it, try to do it in a noble way until I die. And others say, no, this is not my most fulfilling life. I'm going to break free from that. Why do you think some people have that realization and others don't? And then, or why do you think some people are able to break free while others don't?
It's that struggle for identity. It is easier to just live under the shadow of other people's story because somehow that gives us significance. It's like something, for example, not to take it lightly, but living in Germany, sometimes I would hear people say, I'm a second or third or fourth generation Holocaust survivor. It's like, okay, that sounds, I get it.
Yeah.
But you didn't go through that.
Right.
You have not earned the right to say, I know what it's like to have gone through the horror of that. So you could say, yeah, I'm a third generation, whatever. It's like, but you didn't do anything to contribute to that, or you're not one of the stories that help other people, heal from it.
Yeah, so
Good.
it's almost like saying, like in that part, your identity is wrapped up in something else. Now, it could be your family lineage,
Right.
what you're saying there, but either way, you're not really going to pursue your own identity if you've got it wrapped up inside of something else, whether it's your family or somebody that society told you something.
You're living under the shadow of something great,
Yeah.
something amazing. And then deep inside, that, like the worst thing that somebody can tell you, the worst advice, because you really don't want to hear it. You are fine just the way you are.
Mm,
You're special. Just you're okay. And deep inside, okay, you know what? But I'm not. There's something inside me that speaks to me and tells me I could
yeah.
be a little better. I have the capacity, the ability. Uh, I tell you one example. Like one time, I decided to run a marathon, and I had not trained. The Saturday marathon.
You're just gonna
Yeah, I
wake
know.
up and run 26 miles.
Yeah, it was Thursday. I saw the advertisement. I saw the TV commercial
No way.
and said Sunday, Los Angeles Marathon. Blah blah blah. Exciting. I'm like, it's Thursday. I think I can do it. And then I did all the things that you could do wrong. I bought the shoes and the shorts, the T-shirt that day, and then I
you
signed up for it.
you put on the look of a marathoner.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I had not earned the right. And then, probably 10 miles into it, I was just like, forget it. I'm going to give up.
Yeah.
And then I hear from behind me, click, click, click. And I turn around and there's a guy with one leg and crutches.
Mm.
Going. And I'm like, oh man, if this guy is going to finish, I better finish.
Wow.
Now I need to earn the right to say that at least I participated in the marathon. I know that I didn't run it. I mean, I ran, I walked, I crawled. I
Right.
I finished it.
Wow.
But that guy earned the right. I'm like, okay, I need to earn the right to say I did the best I could under the circumstances. And I think most people don't, and they know it. So it's easier to hide under the shadow of like, oh well, my uncle is a marathon runner, or my lineage, they go back to the Civil War and they were heroes and they did that. It's like wonderful, but what have you done?
Mm.
And I don't think people want to be faced with that because it requires what? Yeah, what has been your contribution to that identity that you call me?
Yeah. Well, I feel like so many of us struggle with self-awareness too. Do you feel like that's part of the shortfall is why people can't figure out what their best life is because they're not really even self-aware of who they are, what really makes them tick and those things? I see that frequently in the work that I do. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Do you feel like that is a hindrance for people when you say, well, you be who you want to be who you really are? I think a lot of people are like, what is that?
It's hard because again it goes back to that you're you're okay the way you are, and deep inside it's like I know that there is a little bit something else that I could be doing, but then you have to have those conversations and have someone else who would listen to you and be like, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you want to be? But the moment you share your truth, your desire, then that thing that came out of your mouth, it becomes your own judge. Oh crap, I said I wanted to do this. Now it's out there. Will they hold me accountable? Will they follow up? And then will I look like a fool because I said I wanted to do this, but I haven't?
Yeah.
Your own words become your own little hell because you're the one who said, I think it would be interesting to do this or to become that or to learn a new language. It's like, well, nobody imposed that on you for the most part, for most people. Nobody imposed that. You said you wanted to do it, and what happened? And it goes back to you are the light at the end of the tunnel because I think we torture ourselves a lot because we know that we could be doing a little better. And the moment we share our truth with other people or our story or our desires, then they could become your accountability partner. or they could become the people that you told the story to, and when are they going to ask me, when are they going to follow up and say, have
Right.
you done anything about that? So we don't, and it dies with us. We let it die inside of us. There's a quote that I heard one time that one of the richest places in the world are the cemeteries, because there's all these ideas, all these hopes, all these dreams that died with the person. They never really follow through. Someday I'm going to do this. Someday when things are better, I'm going to do this. So all those hopes and dreams die with the person. And I think we don't share enough, because then it becomes real. And then somebody knows what we want to do, and they may say, when? And some of my closest friends, sometimes they tell me, so Giampiero, you've been saying you want to be a public speaker. When is that going to happen?
Yeah.
And I've been saying it for 20 years. So it's like,
well, I think that's, whether it's a structured accountability or whether it's just having a group of people or a single person, whether that's, a family member, whether it's a friend, or in some pieces, it could even be a therapist, a counselor, whoever you have. But the idea of just sharing your dreams, having somebody help you unpack what your dreams are, or what, you think you should be doing beyond what you're doing. And then having shared that with somebody else sort of creates that internal accountability. But that word can be seen as a negative, but it's not.
Right.
And even from just a friendship, like if my friend has told me that they wish they could run a marathon, I think that's great that I'm asking them, so how are we doing on that deal? It's
right.
Not, I have no accountability. I have no horse in the race, so to speak. It doesn't matter to me if he runs it or not, but I care about him. I'm going to ask him about it. And so I do think there's something dynamic that happens when we move beyond just knowing what our preferred vision is for our future, which is hard enough to clarify that. But it's something magic happens, I think, when we share that with others that we trust.
Yes. And you have to share it with somebody who has, to a degree, earned the right to hear your story.
Mm.
And when you do that, then it becomes real, a little more real than before, because it's out. Now it's time to get to work. And I think having that accountability is crucial for you to accomplish anything that you want to do. And again, it goes back to the conversations. It has to happen. Okay, I'll tell you how I came up. I started developing this line of thought. So I was in Afghanistan for 10 months. I was in combat. And then I figured that being a 32-year-old in combat was enough for me to not to get PTSD, not to get traumatized by what I saw and I did. But then a few years later, after I left the service, I started to get depressed. And I knew better because I love psychology. I've read a lot of psychology books. So I went to talk to a psychologist. And I went to a psychologist for 10 months, every other week. And then later on, I realized something, that the psychologist had never given me any tips or had told me what I needed to do to better my life. He just created the space for me to speak. And when you speak and you listen to yourself, then you begin to realize, okay, what I just said right now is not fully true. Haven't you ever had a thought and it sounds so clever in your mind, and then you speak and then you realize how foolish, how full of crap you are?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it sounded very clever in my head, but I need to work on that. Therefore, you need a space to speak. I was thinking about how I was going to share this with you. And there's a quote that I've always liked, and I understand it more and more as I get older. And it's Archimedes, where he says...
Archimedes, yeah.
Yeah, where he said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum, a place for me to place it, and I will move the world. I think that's conversations. The lever is the conversation. The place to put it is the listening ear. Is the place, the person who honors your story enough to say, I'm going to stand here, and if all you need me is to listen to you, I will do that so you can articulate what you're thinking right now. I mean, this is one conversation we're having, and maybe 2 months from now, I'll have the same conversation with somebody else, and I begin to polish and articulate my idea a little bit better. And then I get a little bit better. Because sometimes the conversations we have are the same conversations. We just get better at telling our story. And how do you pass culture from one generation to another? Through storytelling. It's in the spoken word. Therefore, conversation, podcasts, interviews are so vital, because you are creating the space for me to articulate my thoughts. And if they're of any value, I will continue to contend with that, but I will get a little better at sharing my idea with other people.
Yeah, there's so much in there to unpack.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. I've got like 6 different directions I'd want to go with that. One of the things I thought of was just, like you never learn something as well as when you teach it. And so it's sort of ties into that. Like, you think you know your story, you think you know how you think, but then when you start to articulate it, you're like, that doesn't even make sense, because you sort of have to in a way, you're kind of teaching it to whoever
Right.
you're talking to. I think that certainly was super interesting. But one thing I'd like to touch on a little bit, I know we're starting to get close to time already. But one of the things I struggle with, and I'm curious if you struggle with this or if you have any insight, is as somebody who loves to ask questions like this, I just love digging in. I love asking questions. I love getting insights. One of the things I struggle with is finding people who can give me that in return, because I think I generally attract people who want to be heard, need to be heard, and I generally take the position as the question asker. And then some days I wake up and I can be frustrated that it seems like nobody cares about me. And I'm wondering if that's ever something you've encountered or have any wisdom on that.
Yes. Okay. Let me break it into 2 parts. There's a lot of things also flowing in my mind right now. Sometimes when you are out there trying to help a lot of people, it comes to a point where you're empty. You're empty because, again, you if I understood it correctly, you begin to ask yourself the question, what about me? Who's going to be there for me? I'm there for a lot of people. Who's going to be there for me? In the West, we grew up with a lot of ideas that are really great. Like, it's better to give than to receive. Sharing, all these different things about other people first. One thing that we were never asked is to ask. Again, we need to, the purpose of having conversations is not to get answers to our questions. I think is more, the purpose of conversations is for us to learn how to ask better questions. And one of those questions is, can you be there for me? Can you just, I don't need you to help me, but I need you to support me through this. And could you listen to me? I'm not trying to share you the truth, whatever that means. I'm just trying to share with you some ideas. And I need to hear myself speak these ideas so I can see if they're sound. But we have not learned how to ask other people to be there for us. It's part of that vulnerability. And we feel empty because, have you ever heard that saying, what's eating you?
Yeah.
It's a process. Something is happening inside you. And I think it's the unmanifested spoken word that has not been developed because there is no outlet for you to speak and to begin to create. I mean, there's twofold. You speak, but you also listen to yourself. And I think how do we overcome this is by learning how to ask people to listen to us, to be there for us. I think that helps a little bit. Again, like the psychologist who, all he gave me was the space for me to speak what I was feeling. And some of it was justified, and some of it wasn't. Some of it was stories that more complaining and more like life is not fair and it shouldn't be this way. Life is so unfair and we shouldn't have war. And why did I even go to Afghanistan? Why was I? I was probably part of the problem. And it was just complain until I began to build a philosophy, a sophisticated philosophy about good and evil. And I think that's something that I learned from Jordan Peterson, is that those soldiers that he's talked to that have PTSD, they had to transcend their state where they're at and develop a sophisticated philosophy about good and evil in order for them to deal with their PTSD.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, as you articulate what you're feeling inside, then you begin to ask better questions. Yeah, and one of those questions is, will you be there for me?
Right. So what about this idea? There's a notion that I think a lot of people fall into, and you were able to overcome this idea that maybe it's too late to live my best life. Like, the things have passed me by. Life has passed me by. I can't really move toward who I think I really could be, or my contribution to the world. And kind of like you mentioned, the graveyards are filled with these great dreams and these great visions that just sort of die there. And so it makes me think about, I don't remember who said the quote, but something about, the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best day is today. This idea that,
Right.
I think we can fall into this trap of saying it's too late for me. I'm 50 years old. I can't really be who I want to be. What would be your message to the people that are saying, I think I missed my opportunity to be who I could or should be?
I think sometimes we get too attached to the outcome, but, or should I say, and we get too attached to the outcome. However, I heard a doctor speak one time, and he said, it is never too late to have a happy childhood. And how do you do this? By reframing. Oftentimes, for example, I had all these issues about my mom and my father. If they would have only done this differently, then I would have had a different childhood and things would have been better for me. And then as I got older and I became a parent, one of the things that I always said throughout my teenage years, I never want to be like my father. And now that I'm in my 40s, I realize that I made some of the same mistakes my father made. And one thing that I realize is my father, like me right now, was just figuring out how to do it. He didn't know better, and we don't know better. We assume that the grown-ups, the adults, the people that came before us, they knew. And it's like, no, we're all trying to figure it out. And we need to give those people a little bit more possibility to redeem themselves by treating them as we are right now. Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. Like right now, nobody knows what's going to happen next month. But we're trying to do the best with what we can. And you think of like a couple who have children, and they're figuring it out every day because every one of their kids is different. They're born with different personalities. And what works with one kid doesn't work with the other. And we have to look at our past and be like, those people who hurt us or we think hurted us, and maybe some of them did. What was their childhood like? When did they make those decisions? When did life go south or dark for them? And what decisions did they make up in their minds? Well, from this moment on, I'm going to be like this. And then when you start thinking and giving people the benefit of the doubt, like we do, give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. I heard a quote that says, we treat other people, or we judge other people by their actions, and we judge ourselves by our intentions. And I think when we look back and we allow other people to redeem themselves by giving them that benefit of the doubt, then we can also reframe our past and also our future. Okay, well, here I am. This is what happened to me. What decisions can I make right now to get a little bit closer to that ideal me? because it may be too late to go back to school and get a bachelor's, get a master or a PhD to have this ideal label and title. But that doesn't mean that you cannot continue to educate yourself. That doesn't mean that you cannot be a contribution as you better yourself every day through reading and educating yourself. I mean, there's so many more resources that the people that came before us didn't have. So I think sometimes we get stuck to something ideal. We romanticize
Right. Yeah.
something. If I only had a few letters after my name,
Right.
then I would be worthy. And it goes with that, I think we create our own little hell, because it's like, if I could only be a PhD, then people will respect me and see all my gifts and my greatness. And it's like, who made up that story?
Mm. Oh my gosh, it's so good. There's all of these things. So part of this is pursuing, part of, I guess, pursuing the light that is our future, is being intentional about figuring out what it is that we want from life and going after it. But it sounds like a good chunk of that is overcoming these obstacles that get in the way. It could be societal expectations. It could be this idea of, if only I had this. It could be this sort of attachment to things that happened to us in our past that we're sort of allowing to identify our future. When you said these words, I got goosebumps. I literally got goosebumps when you said, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. That was powerful. That's like a whole other episode. But I just love that you shared that. I think that's so good. This idea of, whether you want to call it grace or allowing people to redeem themselves, whatever it is, forgiving people to some point to allow you to get over that and not be hindered by that anymore is huge insight, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. For sure. And it begins with you. No one can save you. Your parents are too old, or the people that came before you are too old or dead. They're probably dead, and there's nothing they can do. But you're still here, and you are the one who can take responsibility and say, okay, with everything that has happened to me, where do I get fixated in the past and how things could have been better or could have been different? Or do I reinvent myself and see what I can do with what I have? It's like making a salad. Okay, maybe you don't have the tomatoes, but you still have all these other vegetables. And it's like, man, I don't have tomatoes, so I guess I'm done. It's like, use the other ingredients.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
We're getting to the end here. So I want to give you an opportunity. We'll come back. I'm going to close off. We'll come back and give us the final words or the quote or whatever. But before we do that, if people like what they're hearing, how can they connect with you? If they're like, I kind of want to stay plugged in with this guy and what he's got going, how can they do that?
So this is one project that I'm working on. Like, I know right now, one of my fears is that with all the changes going on, that not right now, but 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, there's a lot of people that are going to hit this point where they're going to feel depressed or close to it. And I think people need an outlet. And if I could be of any service, I could give you my phone number, my email, and if people want to just have a listening ear. Not as I'm not a medical professional or anything like that, but I'm a person who's lived a lot. I've been depressed. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I've talked to a psychologist. And what I've realized is sometimes people just need someone to listen to them and to feel like, you're a real person and I hear you. I'm here for you. Speak. And the healing happens. Like, the doctor doesn't heal you. You heal yourself by articulating what you're feeling. And sometimes we don't know what we're feeling. This is why it's so crappy. You've seen Harry Potter, right?
I have.
Read books. Okay. Lord Voldemort, right? People call him, even the professors, the teachers would call him, he who must not be named.
Yeah.
And until you name that thing that is out there, you have no power over it. And Harry Potter realizes we need to call him by his name. And then once you're like, I am depressed right now, or I'm feeling like crap right now. That's what I'm confronting right now. And then you say it, then you become more powerful. And then you can push against it. But if you keep it inside, it will eat you up. What's eating you? What got into you? It's like it's internal. So if I could be of any value to anyone, I want to create this project where I could just have people talk to me and say, "Hey, Giampiero, I need 30 minutes. Can you just listen to me?" Because my advice is anecdotal, just stories. This is what happened to me, and this is how I handled it. But how are you going to handle it? Tell me. I know there's too much skin in the game when you want to share this with your spouse, with your friends, with your family, because immediately they're going to be like, "Come on, you're okay the way you are. You're too sensitive. You're exaggerating," and they don't honor your story. And I want to be one who earns the right to hear your story and give you the space for you to heal you. Only you can do it. You are the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's so good. Well, if you want to, you can either say your contact information now if you'd like, or you can just give it to me and I'll put it in the show notes. How do you want to handle that?
I will text you and you can put it underneath it. Giampiero, how do you spell that?
Yeah, right, exactly. Giampiero Scattolon. It's just exactly how it actually is how it sounds. It's easier to look at and say than it is to say it and spell it. So
exactly,
we'll do that. I'll put the email, whatever contact information you want to provide. I'll put that into the show notes. Or if people are wondering, if they missed it in the show notes, just get a hold of me and I can connect you with Giampiero. That's no problem at all. You guys all know how to get a hold of me. So I'm going to come back to you in a second. Giampiero, you can close us off with a final quote or final thoughts for our folks. But if you guys are listening here, if you like what you're hearing, if you want to support what we're doing here, we have a Patreon account, patreon.com/Steve Fredlund. Otherwise, if you could just like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, those things all help. Feel free to connect with me on social media. All of that jazz, you know the drill. I'd love to connect with everybody out there. It's just so encouraging to hear from all of you. I get a lot of emails and a lot of encouragement from folks, and that means a ton to me. I also get ideas on who we can chat with. So if you have ideas on who to chat with, who would be interesting, reach out. I'd love to hear that. So let's come back to Giampiero to close us off.
All right. So there's one quote that I always think of, and it's by Carl Jung. He was a psychologist. And Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Wow, that's good. I normally just like to drop the mic and say, okay, that's it. Thank you for joining. But real quick, I need to know what does that mean for you? What would you say is the key takeaway from that?
That the underlying pain, the underlying thing that is stopping every single one of us, it's something that is in the subconscious. And this is why we need to speak it into being. What is this thing that I'm feeling? Okay, it feels like this, it feels like that. And then you listen to yourself. If anything, think on paper, get a piece of paper and start writing your thoughts. This is what I'm feeling right now, blah, 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 blah. And then look at it, study it, and become a student of you. And then you will begin to realize, okay, well, I can change that. I can work with that, because now you've given it a name, like Lord Voldemort. And then you become strong enough to push against it and to work with it and to maybe destroy it.
Yeah, I love it. You dropped so much wisdom in this 1 hour session. Thank you so much, Giampiero. We'll be in touch for sure. And if you want to get a hold of him, get a hold of me if you can't find it in the show notes, and we'll make that connection. But seriously, thank you so much. I appreciate your time more than you realize.
Likewise. Thank you so much.